Y'all, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to this episode of Love and Marriage Huntsville. Now, for those of you guys who are also not fans of Married to Medicine, you might find this review a little bit confusing because I'm not going to assume that you were just watching Married to Medicine if you're watching Love and Marriage Huntsville. You probably should be because they are two great and amazing shows, but I'm just not going to assume that, okay? All right, so number one, as you guys can see, I'm not in my studio. I think I told you in the last video that I am sick, so I'm actually just on the couch. So we just gonna have to get it done here. I got my microphone, I got my camera here, and so I got my notes, and we're gonna make it do what it do. So bear with me. This ain't my typical setup. All right, for those of you guys who may be new here, still subscribe because I'm still gonna give it to you like I need to. But we got to talk about, I think, as you guys can see, if you saw the thumbnail for this episode, you guys may also recognize the thumbnail for this episode. And I really felt like it's interesting that this episode of Love and Marriage Huntsville coincides with the timing of Married to Medicine, where we just saw Quad getting excommunicated from the group trip. And it's so interesting and intriguing to me that we get a little bit of a parallel here on Love and Marriage Huntsville, but with Keke. And so I want to kind of also in this episode or this review discuss the ways in which these two casts differ and how they handled the excommunication of a cast member and how the cast member handled it very, very differently. Okay. So I have to I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this because it is glaringly obvious that there is a parallel here. And no one would have known this could be the case, that obviously these shows would come out at the same time. No one would have known that when one was filming, one was also having a similar issue, but they were being handled so very differently. I'm gonna get into the episode. I'm gonna rate it. If I had to rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm just gonna go ahead and get it over with. I'm gonna rate this a 10 plus. A 10 plus for me being the highest of the high because the episode was so super intriguing to me. I took a ton of notes. I'm not even sure I'll read through all of them because some of the scenes and scenarios I felt like are a bit repetitive for Love and Marriage Huntsville, only in the sense that it is about Martell and Melody. And I feel like we've gone around the mulberry bush with this, but we're in a different space and time, and there are new players in the mix. So we will get into it, and I'll give you some of my own observations. So it's a 10 for me. We of course get some breaking the fourth wall. We get some sage advice from the therapist. We get an interesting sort of cast divide on a couple of different issues. We get some interesting steps forward. So I'm all in. I'm all in on it. So let's get started with the quad and the Keke of it all. Um Keke has shown up on the group trip to Houston. Now, in the scene when she arrives, let's just go ahead and do the recap, and I'll touch on this when we get there. The couples are doing like a trust fall, and I hate to even use the word couples because I feel like why y'all Nell? Aren't you supposed to be friends with Melody and Martell? Why would you keep trying to put these two people together? Like, I feel like and Marceau is going to touch on this so eloquently at the end of the episode. But to continue to try to put these two people together is not only potentially re-traumatizing to one or both parties, but to the group and to us as an audience. Okay. I am tired of being re traumatized by these two parties who will never be back on the same page, nor do I care to see them on the same page. And I don't think anyone in the audience wants to see them on the same page. Half of the audience can barely tolerate one of the parties. Okay. And of course, by that I mean Melody and Martell. You know, when Melody and Martell are put together to do the trust fall, which is basically falling in the other person's arms and trusting that they're going to catch you. When it's time for Melody to fall into Martell's arms, she just collapses on the floor because she says she can trust the floor more than she trusts Martell. Don't quite say that I blame her. And I don't want this to be a Martell bashing session, but dang, it just feels like this man will never ever learn. And I do agree with Nell that he exhibits classic narcissist behavior. I'm not going to call him a narcissist, but I'm going to tell you that he exhibits some of the characteristics, but especially based on this episode right here. All right. Um when it's Mel's turn to catch him, she, of course, is not going to even flinch and bother to try to catch him, and he falls to the floor as well, which is really a metaphor for the potential of progress that could be made by Nell's continuous attempts to put these two together. It's always going to collapse, and everyone is going to be on the ground. Leave it alone. Okay. Marceau catches Courtney, Tisha catches Stormy, and then Stormy catches Tisha, and then dun 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 dun, like Quad popping up out of a coffin, Keke Jabbar arrives. Okay, like nothing has ever happened. So Nell must now explain why she invited Keke. Okay, so she gets the mic, the metaphorical mic, and she just apparently she needs to throw Mel under the bus a little bit first, because she says that, well, Mel asked Keke to give Nell a call, and Nell is willing to try to move forward, and then she gives Keke the floor. Again, this harkens back to the quad situation in so many ways, and we'll touch on it a bit here. So Keke apologizes to everybody at the barbecue, and expect like Kimmy and Maurice. She apologizes because she did this in their home, and she apologizes to Letitia for violating her personal space. All right. So Maurice and Kimmy accept her apology, but they're like, girl, it's too little, too late. It was a month ago, okay, when this happened. And Keke feels like, you know, she couldn't really face Kimmy and Maurice. A better answer for Keke would have been that plus my actions took place in a public setting in front of this group. I felt like my apology also needed to be in front of this group. This apology is impossible to talk about without also thinking about the Quad situation of it all. You know, had Quad made some apologies beforehand or a lot earlier, maybe she would have been forgiven by the group as well. Perhaps, maybe, I don't know. And then to cap that off, and we'll touch on it more at the end, but Keke says at the end of this episode, I apologize for what I did, but I'm not sorry I did it. But I do apologize for the action. I have sat here and dissected that apology from which way from last Sunday to this Sunday. And I'm trying to understand, is that a genuine apology or is that a non apology? It's kind of like saying sorry, not sorry. You know what I'm saying? Like, either you're going to apologize like you did in that moment, or you're not going to apologize at all. Like, I'm just I'm just failing to understand. And this, listen, I have taken I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. I'm not gonna hold y'all. I took some Theraflu. So my mind could be a little chop, 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 chop right now. Chop suey. But um I do feel like I'm still in control of my faculties. So I just am trying to really get it. I'm like breaking it down in my mind and I'm like, I apologize for what I did, but I'm not sorry I did it. But I do apologize for that action. Let me know if it's making sense to y'all, okay? Because it's feeling kind of similar to a quad apology. Okay. A quad apology on the show, which was really not much of an apology, if you know what I mean. Sorry, quad, but I mean, we gotta talk about it and we gotta be honest about that, right? Um, so we do get an apology, like I said, but later on in her confessional, which means time has passed. She's had time to reflect on the show, the actions, what happened in Houston, and she still is sorry, not sorry. What does that mean? What am I supposed to take from that? I don't know. Um, but does Tisha accept her apology? Sure. Then she dismisses herself, i.e., I'm sorry, but I don't accept your apology. So we have another situation where someone is saying something simply just to say it and then get out of the situation because she is upset because she thought the entire group agreed that what Keke did was not okay. So why is she here, Ike? Which leads me to wonder if maybe there was some either spoken or unspoken agreement that Kiki's actions warranted her not to be able to come around the group anymore. Was there some agreement that was made behind the scenes? Was there some talk about it? Because the way Letitia is preferencing this, it almost feels like there was a conversation or an agreement that, oh, we all agree that was wrong, and we all agree she's not welcome around the group. And now someone is going against that. So I have to ask that question, right? She feels played. Why didn't anybody say anything to her about it? And Chris comes to check on her and lets her know Nell needs to have a convo with Letitia, and she's gonna have to. Tisha's gonna take a minute to gather herself. So Nell goes to talk to Tisha and Marceau, and she's like, "Do y'all want her here? I told her it may not go the way she wanted. Her and Fletcher have been arguing. She didn't really want to do it, and Mel told her to call me." I noticed that she continues to. It was Mel. Mel. It was Mel in the library with the candlestick. If you are if you know your clue, okay, you will understand that reference. All right. Um, Tisha feels blindsided and betrayed, especially because Mel knew the history. So Nell can't even argue with her, and it had been weighing on her, and she was just hoping that Keke wouldn't show up, and she apologizes and says, "Keke not gonna stay. I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix it." And she should have spoken to Letitia first. Nell goes back to the group and reveals that since the house is divided, unfortunately, Keke will not be able to stay. Kiki's like, "That's fine. I'll stay somewhere else." Okay. Stormy's like, "That's cool. She can stay with us." All right. You ain't got to explain Nathan. And Keke says she's not going to allow anyone to dictate where she can or cannot go. And Nell is like, "I just didn't want the group to be divided." And Mel is like, "Did Tisha tell you that it was a no?" And Nell is like, "Pretty much." Marceau chimes in, "Do you remember when you were having your issues and didn't want people to, you didn't want to be around certain people?" I'm gonna stop there because we get into something completely different. But what I do want to point out here is where the parallels with Married to Medicine do come into fruition. On Married to Medicine, I would have expected that if no one else vouched for Quad, that it would have been Phaedra. And true enough that Phaedra's attempts to bring Quad into the group had not yet yielded the results that maybe she was hoping for. But with Phaedra being a friend to Quad, one would have expected her to at least like show some level of support for Quad, maybe going to her room to check in on her or saying to the ladies, "Hey, wait, like let's hold on. Like, you could stay with me or something." But Phaedra, and not that it was just Phaedra's job to do this, but one would have thought, especially with her being so new, but Phaedra seemed to have a bigger desire to go along with the group than I was expecting. For her to have been, I guess, seeming like a frick to Quad's frack, right? Conversely, you had Stormy and Melody advocating for Keke. Stormy in a big way. Um, and Stormy, while she is relatively new, not as new as Phaedra, I just feel like I would have wanted Phaedra to take the Stormy route and at least somebody chime in for Quad. And to be further honest with you, Keke did a better job of advocating for herself than Quad did. Now, granted, I don't know, there could have been some production thing with it because Quad was allegedly only contracted for a certain amount of episodes, but it just kind of felt like she just shriveled up and just succumbed to whatever they chose to tell her and do to her. Whereas Keke was like, "You cannot tell me what I will or I won't do. I will stay here if I want to. I will move around Houston if I want to, and nobody's going to tell me differently." And I respect that. Now, do I think that Kiki's actions were right? No. Um, do I How do I feel about her apology? Well, in lieu of what she says at the end of the episode, I don't know, but I respect it. I do. I respect somebody that stands 10 toes down and does not let anybody force them out of their position without a fight. Unless you want to be gone, right? Because if you want to be gone, then pieces, deuces, I'm out, right? But I'm not about to sit here and let you like dictate whether or not I move around based on the fact that it's a majority versus me. No, ma'am, Pam. No, ma'am, Pam. And so this is where I feel like the parallels stop again with the somebody advocating for Keke as well as Keke advocating for herself. Whether you like her or not, I gotta respect somebody that stands 10 toes down and I ain't going nowhere and y'all can't push me out. Now what? Now what? And it's interesting that Quad, who has had a larger role within this group, didn't do that. Very interesting to me. Um, in light of me watching this episode, and that's why I make that comparison, right? But not to belabor that point because I could go on and dig deeper and deeper into that because it's such an interesting topic to me to watch how the dynamics in two different groups are played out on the screen. And I think it does say something about the cast in general. And I'll get to that at the end because I'm gonna circle back to that point, and I want y'all to hold on to it because something happens in the end that, unless you are really thinking, you might not get it. But I got it. Okay. All right. So the next thing that we get into is this notion of, you know, Mel, you might not have wanted to be around a certain person, and you wanted us to respect that. And really, what it's boiled down to is, the group listening to either Martell or Melody and whose side they took, if they took a side or not. I wrote down a whole bunch of notes about this scene because it played out for a very long time. And it was very fascinating to watch how things broke down. The gist of this is I will tell you that Martell is really only interested in everyone thinking that Melody potentially cheated on him, or that he cheated first, but he had a reason, and then Melody cheated too, cause she was gone and she got an apartment and she was talking to somebody else while they was apart. What would you expect? Y'all apart. Like what? Um, there's really only a couple of things that I want to point out about this because it was actually rather repetitive to me, his argument, and annoying because he's screaming at the top of his lungs, specifically at Nell. I'm trying to figure out on what planet Chris Fletcher is allowing this man to go buck wild on his wife like that. He's even kind of going buck wild with Stormy. And granted, yeah, it won't like he was threatening them in any way, shape, or form, but I just don't like the way he be posturing with these women on the show, right? Because do I feel like he might get buck with Marceau? Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like to me, I can't see myself letting one of my friends go bucket wild on my spouse and me stand there and not say nothing. I just can't see it happening. I can't figure it out for the life of me. And I had done a screen grab of, Chris Fletcher just sitting there while Martell's yelling at Nell. And I'm like, bruh, like, is anybody awake in there? Like, is anybody present? Are you inside there right now? Because and your wife is screaming at the top of her lungs, so much to the point where she wants to smack this man. The general sense is, Mel found out that he was cheating in 2017. He had been cheating for 2 years. She catches him, I guess, during homecoming in October. Then in December, they split up. She gets an apartment for 4 months or something like that. And I guess maybe she went out on a couple of dates and she herself was trying to get a divorce. They get back together in April of 2018. I think that pretty much sums it up. For him, that's her cheating. Call it what you want. I mean, at this point, you got a whole baby on the way. Or at least if it's not on the way, it's on the way. If you know what I mean. Okay? It's coming up. Coming soon. Okay. Baby by Martell coming soon to a theater near you. Then he uses this idea that while they were married, she would go, I guess, stay at a hotel for a couple of days, just to kind of have some me time or whatever. Negro, if you agree to let her do that, don't be mad that she did it. Because if you had a problem with it, you should have said something then. But if you ain't had no problem with her going to a hotel and having some downtime at that time, then don't be bringing this up to us after the fact, okay? Because you agreed to it. Period. So I don't want to hear nothing else about it. End of story. Um, there's really nothing else important to discuss there, to be honest with you. Although Marceau and Melody do have a conversation about whether or not Mel was the one that invited Keke there. There is a conversation that is flashed back where Melody is talking to Keke and lets her know that they are going to Houston and that she should talk to Nell. I'm assuming from that point, Keke has decided that she's going to talk to Nell. I guess the thought is that was Nell's decision whether or not to say yes or no, and Mel left it up to Nell to decide. I guess that was it. Mel talks to Tisha. They communicate about it. It seems like it's okay. Um, they make some progress, I think. Then it's time to go horseback riding. One thing I did notice in that argument, though, with Martell was that Letitia did stick up for Martell, saying that he's never asked him to pick sides and that he just said, right is right. But the funny thing about it is, earlier in that argument, Martell basically says that he does expect them to pick sides because she is trying to dig a grave for him and trying to send him to jail. So if they're gonna be friends with him and come to his house, I was like, not the house that Chris was trying to get you to move out of. Um, if they're gonna be coming to his house, then they need to pick a side. He said that. So I'm like, is he asking y'all to pick a side or not pick a side? Because he said it out his own mouth. He wanting them to pick a side. So when they do pick a side, you can't be mad, brother. For real, for real. Am I wrong? Or did I mishear that? I'm looking at my notes. I watched this episode twice, by the way. Okay? 2 times. So you tell me, pick a side, or nah. All right. All right. Finally, it's time to do some horseback riding. Chris feels like Martell derailed their attempts to give Keke the quad treatment. Um, and Letitia feels like Keke is hanging around like Casper the ghost, and nobody wants her there. Except we know some people do want her there. Interesting. All right. So apparently there's a couples therapist at the horse riding spot. Mel is like, what the F again? Kimmy is petrified of horses, and truth be told, girl, I get it. If you ever ridden a horse, in my opinion, it could be a dangerous game. Okay. It could be a dangerous game. They go horseback riding. Kimmy chats with the therapist. Then the group eats dinner and it's time for group therapy. Now, if you watch the scene and you look at how everyone is situated, you will notice that there are two sides. There's one side supporting the Scotts, Melody, Stormy, Keke, Courtney are all seated on the other side. All right. So it's the support Keke group and then this Keke go home group. Okay. I don't know if you noticed that. Um, so Nell kicks things off about how, Keke asked to join the group in Houston after throwing a drink on Letitia and, asked if Keke has anything to say. She ain't got nothing. She feels like she did what she was supposed to do. Was that producer mandated or was that her choice? Or was she just saying that I did what I was supposed to do, as in that was the right thing to do, right? She gave a sincere apology and she can't help it. They receive it and they can occupy the same space and not speak to each other and be okay. Sounds about like what they got going on down to the Potomac or to the Real Housewives of New Jersey if you read the reports. Teresa and Melissa. Um, Stormy steps in and vouches for Keke, unlike anybody did for Quad. And she talks about Keke coming in with good energy and how the past keeps being thrown at her. Nobody did that for Quad. And she doesn't want to ostracize her because it feels like everybody is saying, Keke, you are not supposed to be here. And Stormy says, we know it wasn't right what Keke did, but how do we grow from this? Nobody said that to Quad. Nobody gave her that grace. Whether she deserved it or not in that moment, I just felt like it's interesting to see this play out. Keke has been a part of this group for less time than Quad was a part of Married to Medicine, but is getting better treatment from somebody who is newer to the group than anybody did on Married to Medicine. Now, granted, again, I understand that there are behind the scenes shenanigans at play. I don't want to say shenanigans, but I'm sure issues at play that Quad may have had with production as well. So, but I'm simply talking about how things played out on the scene, on the screen, right? There was not, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Like I'm just pointing out the similarities and the differences. Marceau wants to leave the door open for love, but the time is not now, he says. And it's not wanted right now. And Keke feels rejected. Marceau points out that he, Letitia, and Mel have grown and gotten better in their communication. And, Mel fills in the blanks to the therapist about how they were able to work through their issues today and about how they all wanted peace. And Nell brings up a good point that it took time for them to all get there. And so Marceau, excuse me, likens Mel and Martell's relationship to Letitia and Kiki's, saying that everybody keeps trying to put them together, but it could be further traumatizing to one or both of the parties and then detrimental to the group, which I thought was a valid point. And in her confessional, this was so good. Tisha says she agrees with Marceau, and she says basically, and God said go. I can't fault her for being there. I mean, that's the reality of where she is based on someone throwing a drink at her. I can't say that it's hard to argue with that point, right? It's hard to, especially when she didn't retaliate. But the therapist says something that I feel like a lot of these shows could benefit from. Married to Medicine, Potomac, Jersey, and that is this. You all have something special, and it could look a lot different. She's talking to the group, and I think what she's telling them is consciously, and I think that there's an undertone here, and it may not have been intentional, but I hope that the casts are listening. If you guys have something special with your casts, okay? You guys are in a unique position with jobs on reality television. Your lives could look very, very different right now. If y'all don't figure out how to make this thing work, you could be in a different position. Figure it out. Figure it out, Married to Medicine. Figure it out, Huntsville. Figure it out, New Jersey. Like, I felt like she was really giving them that advice in the moment. Now, because I also know, you know, Carlos King is very aware of how some of these other shows are playing out. And we know that he has admitted to talking to them, that cast specifically. Like, we got y'all, you better figure it out. I don't worry about this cast falling prey to that. But I just thought it was interesting that she said it, given the timing of where we are with several other shows. So at that point, the therapist lets them know that there's work that needs to be done. Keke still doesn't know where she stands with the group. And this one statement, I felt like she took a very quad approach to things. And y'all know I love quad. But there were things that Quad could have probably done differently as well. And this was the moment that I felt like, Keke, why did you say this? I apologize for what I did, but I'm not sorry I did it. But I do apologize for that action. What are we supposed to do with that? Like, literally, what are we supposed to do with that? Because now that you said that, is the cast supposed to now? It's harder. It makes you harder to defend. And it makes it look like you ain't really all that sorry. And maybe you're really not. Y'all let me know in the comment section what you took from that at the end and how you felt about it. Did you see any similarities to the Quad situation, or was it just me? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And with that, y'all listen, it's the holidays. Maybe we'll do a little Christmas live or something like that. I don't know. But in any case, I love y'all. Be careful out there. Stay safe. And I will catch you in the next video.
So, Desiree Davenport, what are you hoping to accomplish with this show?
Honestly, I've lost everything in the most horrible way possible. And listen, I want it all back. I'm willing to build it piece by piece, and I mean brick by brick.
Oh, honey, she is done. I bet you a Birkin she doesn't last all season with us. Just watch.
I'm Misha Hill, and I'd like to consider myself the matriarch of this dynamic group of ladies. I mean, someone has to keep them under control.
I'm Davita Delaney.
I mean, I think I could teach these ladies a thing or two about how to get and keep a good man.
They said she was a gold digger. She ain't that for me. I'm just really looking forward to being surrounded by other empowering bosses.
Yes, I know exactly what she's doing. And if she keep playing in my face, I'm gonna have to let her off her dirty little secrets just like she did to me. And I'm not playing.
Let's get this straight. If I brought you into this circle, I just as easily can take you out. She ain't running nothing over here, okay? She needs to be worried about running that household and worried about why that husband of hers is never at home.
Oh, hell.
Ooh, child, this is about to be a mess.
Oh my God, I hate mess. What in the world did I get myself into?